Everybody stop what you're doing, please!
When it comes to remodeling and renovating your home, there is no better show on your radio. This is Around the House with Eric G.
Where's the hammer?
From your back fence to the sidewalk, Eric will tell you how to keep it all in tip-top shape while helping you save a buck while doing it. If you like DIY projects, it takes a lot of practice to get good at it, and Eric is here to guide the way.
Is it on the... Go up on the other floor. Somebody go up there and stop the hammering.
All that and more on the fastest 2 hours of home improvement radio.
These are the wrong plans. These are the old plans. Oh!
Welcome to
Stop it!
Around the House with Eric G.
Welcome to Around the House with Eric G. This is the Pro Insider Podcast. This is where we talk home improvement based stuff for all you guys out in the trades out there. Doesn't matter if you're a designer, doesn't matter if you're a lumberyard building owner, whatever you're out there doing, this is for you. And we've got a special guest today, my friend Carrie Akre, who is Rockstar, coach, all that stuff. Welcome to Around the House, Carrie.
Thank you, Eric. Happy to be here.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. Well, you know, I've known you for a long time, and my dad even worked with your parents out at Hanford in the area. So we go.
Really?
Yeah, he was funny because when I first in the 90s was, you know, I'd met Eric and all of you. I mean, we're all Tri-Cities people. So for a while there, we'd kind of bounced off each other a little bit. And I have some memories way back when. But, you know, playing in the Kamaikan band, I think I crossed paths with you guys a couple times at that kind of stuff. But long story short, yeah, my dad, I was talking about you, and he's like, oh, yeah, I know who that is. I worked with your parents out in the area out there. And I was like, wow,
right, yeah,
cool. So,
yeah.
Oh,
my God, what a small world. I love that.
Yeah, just small world stuff. But you're out there doing this coaching stuff. And, you know, there's a fair amount of coaches out there. But when I saw what you're doing and your just smart, innovative approach, you got my attention.
Oh, that's so nice. You know, it's in the last few years, you know, I've just started thinking about what is authentic to me in terms of like what kind of work I want to do. And I want purposeful work that's helpful to people. And coaching feels like just an extension of me. You know, I'm someone who my whole life is, you know, I root for the underdog. Mm-hmm. I am a solutions person. I have a very low risk fear.
Well, yeah, I mean, you battled the music industry and won a lot of those battles going up, and you've got a proud music career here in the U.S. and especially here in the Northwest. But then you turned it into the corporate world as well and did well.
Yeah, you know, I sort of figure whatever task is in front of me, I'm persistent, but I also try and persevere. Because, you know, any path you're taking has its good times and it has its bad times. Mm-hmm. And so I have lived both in whatever arena, right? And it's about persevering.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure just, you know, the fight coming out of high school and getting into your first band, Hammerbox, and taking off into that and then turning off and cruising into goodness as the next big stage. You know, you did really well. And of course, Rockford's, we can just keep going in your solo stuff. And that's just on the music side, not even on the professional side. But that's where, you know, and I've always said this about coaching, and I've been through a few coaching sessions myself. It is so smart for somebody out there who's trying to kind of take their own personal game, whatever that is, to the next level, to have somebody on the outside that cares about what they're doing, but can also call them on their own BS, whether it's an excuse, whether it's maybe you're not seeing the vision correctly because you're stuck in your ways, whatever that is, having that set of eyes going, no, seriously, stop it. You need to go this way. is so valuable.
Yeah. And I think I've literally done that with some clients. Like, what are you doing? Stop.
Right?
Yeah. Well, it's nice to have a coach who is means it, right?
Yeah.
So the basis of me doing this comes from a very deep, honest place, right? And I always say, and I'm sure you've heard me say, when I coach, it doesn't have anything to do with me. It's all about you.
Yep.
Like, the only thing I care about is you. And using everything I have or have been through to contribute to a person's growth. But like you said, it does require someone being ready and willing to take responsibility and willing to change. Otherwise, you're just kind of dead in the water.
Oh, I mean, I look back at the mistakes that I've made over my careers, and I'll put, the apostrophe S on that because I've had plenty of them. But, out there, I've had it where I should have had a coach at a couple times. I'm like, man, I would have been so much more successful because it really took a bunch of my peers and coworkers of a business that I owned to pull me aside and go, we're all having a meeting, Goranson, and,
oh, really?
It wasn't anything bad, but it was just, we got to get things reined in a little bit. And it was good. But I look back at that now going, that was a key pivotal part of my life that if I would have had somebody there and I would have been paying attention and listening, I probably would have had half the battles because I just kept, running at the problem, but I could have slowed down and fixed it instead of just attacking it.
Well, I think we're really taught to I've said problem solve everything, fix it, take care of it, take responsibility for it. And often that means, that's kind of in an isolated state, like it's all on you. And in some ways, doing things is on a person, right? Like taking responsibility. But there's no reason to be alone. But I think people have a hard time asking for help, or they don't know where to get the help, or sometimes even what kind of help do I need? Like who would be that person who's going to understand what I'm going through and then really show up for me and actually participate with me in my conversations, my fears, and even helping me make solutions and move forward. Like, we're not taught, or it's not talked about a lot. Like, hey, coaching is a real thing. There are great people. There are smart people. There are people who care. And there are people who will be, like I always say about myself, will be your journey buddy. Yeah. No nonsense journey buddy, dedicated to you to say, how can I help you? What's going on here? Let's problem solve together. Let's face your fears together. I've said in classes, like, I am the voice on your shoulder going, yeah, we're going to go get that. Yeah, we are. Like, let's go get after it. And
that is so you, by the way. That's the great part of this, is knowing you as well as I do. That is just your natural being all by itself.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's the part, that's why I'm doing, I'm bringing what is naturally me to coaching, and it gives me deep sense of purpose, a second round of deep sense of purpose. Music does that for me as well. But the music industry is completely different now and wrought with insecurity and just craziness. And so, at some point I was really looking for what is something else that feels truly purposeful and that is myself. So I really appreciate you saying that.
Well, it's cool because, there's some people out there, it's like, oh, I'm going to do this. And maybe you can watch them struggle and it's not really what they're really good at, but they're having to force it. And I'll tell you what, there's plenty of situations I look at in my past of things I was relationships as well, where I was just forcing it. It just, it just didn't work. And looking back, that's probably one of my biggest faults of myself, and just a little insight on me, trying to force that square peg into a round hole and not giving up when times it's like, hey, slow down. That's not going to work well. And learned a lot of hard lessons in life trying to do that. And again, if I would have been doing that coaching back then and that kind of stuff, I would have had somebody to say, hey man, slow down a little bit. And let's reevaluate your approach to this, because that might not work well.
Well, and you're not alone, right? Like I have stories about that too, like trying to rush or force something. You know, if you're forcing something, it's not meant to be, right? Like if you end up in a state of like trying to make it happen, something's not right there. And I've been there. I mean, I have stories of doing the same thing, and I bet everybody does in some way. And that's some of the teachings that I'm excited to like share with people is those ideas. Like if you're forcing it, it's not the thing, back off. If you're going too fast and you're feeling untethered or spread thin, stop. Or, I mean, you've heard me say a lot of like, what I do with people right away is I slow them way down. And, you know, because I think a lot of people don't slow down long enough to hear themselves or hear the answers or hear the truth.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes we're like, oh, I really don't want to hear that truth because it's going to be maybe painful or hurt. And I don't know how to I don't know how to deal with that. So I'm just not going to.
I still struggle taking my foot off the gas. You know what I mean? I still struggle with taking my foot off the gas because it's like once I get a win and it's like, you know, I had some good wins today, my mental thought is, all right, let's go get the next one. And I've got to be careful. You are. It is, but I got to be careful with that too because I don't tend to slow down and enjoy it as much either. You're like the second person I've had this conversation with in the last 2 days, right? One, I would say, you know, that's who you are. And there's nothing wrong with like, I mean, what a blessed state of mind to be in to like be having wins, right? And you love the work. So nothing wrong with that, right? But it's the slowing down and taking because you could do that forever. I'm the same way. Like I was that way in music too, where I was like, go, 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 keep going. And you keep getting things. So keep going and never slow down long enough to go, how are you doing? What? How are you doing now? Have you seen your family lately? You know, to strike a balance, like you need a balance, but there's certainly, I don't think anything wrong with drive. Yeah.
You know, and it's fun. It's necessary sometimes and it's fun. But then striking the balance, you know, say after 2 months of working really hard, you know, you'll probably feel it on the inside. And that's the other thing I'm big on is like, you know, if you slow down long enough, yourself is telling you what's going on if you'll stop and listen. Like, hey, I'm really tired. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My body's doing that now. I've got a couple hand surgeries coming up because I've been just pushing it too hard doing stuff around. And I have one actually next week. But here's the good thing with that. I'm doing it right before the holidays, and it's a minor one, so it's not a big deal. But it's one of those things that it's like, all right, that's going to slow me down over Christmas. I can't go out and do those things. So I'm actually using it to my advantage because it's going to get me to tap the brakes a little bit and say, you know, you're taking that week off, basically, you know?
Right. And then what are you going to do at that time, right? Like, you know, if you actively slow down and go, I'm going to actively listen and see what comes up. You know, you'll get a lot more out of that break because then, you know, yourself is going to catch up and say, oh, great. You know, while we're sitting and waiting, I've been wanting to tell you a few things. You know, or new ideas will come to you and you can just stockpile them. And then when you can green light go, you'll be off and running again.
You know, it's funny. It's kind of like songwriting, and I've written songs too, but it's one of those things that if you let your brain slow down enough, things naturally come to you.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of letting go. And I agree with you. Like in songwriting, people have asked me about how do you songwrite? And I was like, you know, there are times when a whole song will come. And then there's times where it is about letting go and seeing what comes up. And letting go sometimes is the most important thing to do. I'm like, you know, get out of the way.
But it's also sometimes the most difficult thing to do when you've got a death grip of control as well. So.
Oh yeah. Well, usually because of that, right?
Yep.
And again, that's striking the balance of like not being too controlling and allowing. Yeah. You know, like allow the surprises to show up because they will. And you know, you can only do that if you let go of a bit of control. You know, like I'm never a proponent of like just go passive.
No.
Because that's
reckless.
The point. Yeah, right. But there are all these natural moments of like you need rest, you need time with your family, you need some more space for the new ideas to come in, and then you can go again. to hear yourself, or in case you're covering up pain, and just going in order to not look at it. Like, it's most important to let that stuff come up and get out, because it will leave, right? But you got to process it.
That's an interesting topic, because I've caught myself doing that as well. Just
sure.
power, and I'm cruising. And not so much now, but maybe 7 to 10 years ago, I was powering through stuff just because I didn't want to hear myself think.
Right? Yeah.
I was hiding from it.
Totally. And that's pretty common. I've done that. It wasn't until my mom passed away, which was a game changer. Mm-hmm. And it was so big that I just surrendered. I just knew, I was like, in order to get through this grief, I don't know what to do. I'm going to need to get help, and I'm going to need to surrender and just allow this grief to have its way with me in some ways, like process it. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how long that takes, but I'm just going to be okay with that, because there's no way I can know. So that's a real surrender moment, when you finally just throw your hands up in the air and go, okay, I don't know. I don't know. So I'm going to just let myself let go and process and get help. Sure. Right. Like,
no
but question. It also, during that time, just taught me all these lessons of, like, it's okay to be in pain, and it will process out. It's okay to cry. It's okay to learn methods of taking good care of yourself while these real life things happen, and that they help, and it's okay, and you will get through this.
Yeah, no question.
And I say that, yeah, you will get through this. It will be okay. And learning how to reach out for help, realizing who your good friends are, and then asking them for help, or be around you. Like, we aren't islands, really.
Yeah.
We're not islands. We need each other, especially at times of big crisis. But, I don't know that I don't want a blanket statement that our culture is very individualistic and go and accomplish and get and go, some of which I love, but there's sometimes a missing link of, hey, you don't have to do it all by yourself. Like, asking for help is okay.
Yeah. And that's been looking back, that's been my biggest problem is the help part of it, of just, I got it. Kind of the lone wolf thing,
Oh my God.
Just
totally.
doing it. And, I didn't communicate with, whoever I was dating or married to, whatever, in the past.
Mm-hmm.
That's different now, but that took a lot of personal work on myself to be able to get that. And that's what I think it's cool about with your new way of coaching here, with getting the band back together.
Well,
I love what you're doing with that. Yeah.
You love that?
I love it.
It's interesting. I worried for a long time that people wouldn't get it, because in the Northwest, most people know me from music, right? And so I was like, how can I bring them, my fans or people who I know, along with me on this new section of the journey, right? So they've known me from music, but I'm doing this new thing, coaching, and they've never seen me in this capacity. So how can I help them go, music isn't gone, it is who I am, but here's a new thing. And calling, my workshops, or the people who are involved in the workshops, the band, is one way to kind of connect the two. Like, yeah, being in a band has been a huge part of my life, and band mentality is a thing, right?
Huge.
I mean, you are a group, you're together, you're creating things. And I wanted that thought, not only to connect fans to what I'm doing new, but also just that idea of being a group that works towards creativity or newness or change. Bands do that. And also for people to feel like they're a part of a band,
Yeah. Well, I mean, a band that is functioning halfway correctly is its own self-help group anyway.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean,
well, and it like, it has its good parts and it has its bad parts, but
so I say functioning correctly.
Totally. Yeah. Right. But I take the good things in terms of just being like, band of brothers, band of like creatives, band of, it's a tribe-ish, and, we, as you're talking about like my history and the things you've gone through, like this thing you just mentioned, I was like, oh my God, you're like my brother from another mother, because the same thing was with me. I was so used to being like a lone wolf doing everything by myself because I could.
Mm-hmm.
And I always sort of felt like, well, nobody's going to do it better than me or know what I want better than me.
You're inside
so
my head
I'm going to
now.
do all of it, right? Yeah, right. Like, I'm going to do all of it, especially in music. But man, I hit some big burnout when I did that. And I was like you. I did not know how to ask for help. I was used to doing everything by myself. I didn't know who to turn to because I never had in the past.
Yep.
Or how to say what exactly was wrong or what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how to say any of that.
No, I was the same way. And mine, ironically, when I hit the wall was around when my dad died. And so that happened. And then 2 months later, I got in a near fatal accident and everything came to a halt. And I'm talking my long-term relationship, my business, everything blew up all at once. And it was that control alt delete in life that I had to turn around and relearn a bunch of skills of just how to do things differently because I wasn't going to ever do it again that way. Right.
See, and I'm a big believer of like that happened for a reason. Oh, yeah. Right? Like it's the world saying like, I'm going to help you stop by, having major events happen to you. That'll get you to stop.
All right. The world's going, all right, man, you're not listening to me. So we're going to get your attention now.
Yes. Some bigger crashes than others, right? Like you had an actual crash.
It was bad.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it was bad. Yeah. But, anyway, but at the same point, I can look back now and go, that was the best thing that happened to me.
Right? Exactly. Yeah.
So that's the dangerous part of that. It's like, all right, but one of the things that I like that you're doing too is that you're doing these small groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so that's the thing with the band thing is it's not, people can come in, you get familiar with your group and you're having fun.
Right. And you're, like a small group, say a 5, right? Mm-hmm. That's small enough where everyone can talk to each other. I can hear everyone's situation in life and contribute back. But also, it's a small enough group where people can then help each other. Mm-hmm. It's not like you amongst 300 people.
Yeah.
It's your buddies, your band, and the 5 of you will now hopefully at some point be able to contribute something back to each other. Again, teaching that kind of like, you're not alone.
Yeah.
But within the group, you've heard me say, like, the first thing I do is sort of talk to people about where you're at. And then the second thing sometimes is about checking out your story. Like, how are you saying this? How have you been telling this story? And is it true? And starting to break maybe some old things down so we can get rid of them. Like, is that really true? Because I am about like, what's the real truth here? And if someone's courageous enough and ready, like I've said, then you can step into like, okay, I'm willing to say it all and say it how it is. And once you do that, like you're on the road, when you're safe, you're on the road to like, okay, what are we going to go do about that? What works for you? And then bigger conversations come up in those groups. Like, who are you? Like, who's your authentic self? What do you like? Like trying to remember who you really are or who you want to be, right? Like authentically. And so there's so many questions and deeper topics that come up in an individual session and a group session. And this is the thing that I love. Again, I adore being a journey buddy. Like I always say I'm a killer journey buddy. Like, and that's what I want. Like it's good when you crave to do the work.
Right.
Like I can't wait. Like, because again, it's not about me but selfishly I get to commune with people and I'm interested in people.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've always been fascinated by people. Like, where do you come from? How did you grow up? What's it like? Those are natural questions for me to just start questioning. And the thing I think about me too is I like to go deep into questioning.
Nice.
And, you know, some people have said like, hey, Carrie, not everybody wants to go that deep. I'm like, that's fair. No, maybe people aren't necessarily ready all the time. I'm like, that's absolutely fair. Nor would I push that.
That's true, but getting that deep is where you find the roots of those problems, because it's never really on the surface.
Yeah. You know, I really believe, especially in these last couple of years, I just started to say to myself out of necessity, simple questions. Like sometimes I'll say my coaching really comes down to like 6-year-old language. Like, what are you doing? So, you know, like my questions are, so what? Who cares? Why do we care? Like, you know, and it sounds silly, but it's like the icebreaker question. Like, so what? Like if someone goes, oh my gosh, I can't do this because of this, this, and this, or so-and-so thinks these things of me, or my boss is terrible, or all that, you know, sometimes my answer is, so what? What are we going to do about that? Like, why do we care? Why, you know, so it takes the power back to you to say, why do do you care about that? Like, do you want them to be your buddy? You know, whatever. So the breakdown question.
But some of that comes back to, and I'm going to tie this back into your history and as well as mine, but some of that comes back to jumping on stage, reading that concert review, listening to that person that's, you know, saying stuff about you on social media, all of these things that people have to deal with in life, especially with social media now, of hearing that criticism and having to learn how to process it correctly.
Right. Well, I think it's really true that most often someone's bad attitude towards you has everything to do with them and not you.
Amen.
I mean, I really believe that's a truth. And so I live there. You know, if someone doesn't like my music, there's not much I can do about that. And that's okay. Like it would seem rational to be like, every single person on the planet is going to adore my music. Like, I know that's not rational. So I don't think that. And everyone's allowed their opinion. And I would prefer that. And I don't not taking things personally. When it's rough and someone's being, you know, mean, I would say the majority, if not all the time, it's something going on with them and not you. And if you can separate yourself like that with that thought, you can probably be more loving to yourself and to the situation. You don't have to love the person. You know, you don't have to like agree with this person's behavior, but you can separate and kind of put some kindness feelings around there so that you're not getting drained. And maybe they change. I don't know.
And the one thing I've learned too is the more successful you are in what you're doing and doing well, the more likely you're going to have those people out there trying to communicate that to you. And it's, you know, I've got friends in the news industry here in the Northwest, and they're on TV every day. And if you ever read what the public sends to them, it would tear out your heart for humanity, because you're like, there are some horrible people out there, and the more successful you can be, the more some of those people want to tear you down.
Exactly. I mean, that could be very true. Again, people, well, I don't know about again, but I think the other thing too is there are some people who want to take you down. And again, that's about them, something going on with them, right? Like, how dare you stand up and be happy? You know, like,
or successful or win or whatever you do, whatever you're doing. Yeah.
Or they've decided to equate someone striving and being successful with egotistical or selfish, or something bad about them. And that's not true, right? It takes a lot of work, and it takes courage and perseverance and not happy times to do any kind of entrepreneurial work. And so anyone trying to tear down that kind of person, I think, is foolish. They don't know what it's like. But I also, you know, with the internet, it's like nobody has to answer to their comments.
Yeah.
You know, you could hide behind some fake name and emotionally react or just be mean and say that you're right, the most terrible thing, like terrible. You're right. That's why I don't spend a lot of time on social media. I utilize it and I commune with some people. But I can't hang out because it's sad, you know, like it can be sad.
Very much so.
It takes up a lot of your time, right? Like, I've always been surprised, like, oh wow, like remember when we didn't have the internet? Like, what did I do with my time then?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, there's good and bad of it. I mean, like everything, but, you know, I end up doing a lot of it just because of, you know, this podcast, radio show, that kind of stuff. Just like you and your page and that stuff, it's just part of business. It's day to day. It's work, you know.
Totally.
You have to do it to be successful, but man, it can be overwhelming if you let yourself get out of your lane with that.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it could just be draining. And again, balance. Like, if I'm online all day, then I'm not spending time with my family or friends, or it's just an imbalance. But like, to your point about people getting successful, like I remember there's other people like writers, you know, other famous people. When you hear about what people are saying about them, like, could I survive that? Right. Would I survive like just that kind of brutal, monstrous attacks, like, you know, wishing you were dead or something like that? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, that's scary. That's scary.
I mean, think about back in the, you know, late 80s when you were really diving into your music, early 90s. Could you imagine having that format of everybody taking every show and breaking it down on social media with, you know, wow.
Yeah.
You know, it's different when you're a veteran and you've dealt with that, but being in your 20s dealing with that is a whole different world.
Yeah. I mean, I only had to contend with people in the scene, right? Like whether or not you were cool or not, or whatever, or jealous or something like that. But I don't know.
Look what the Rocket said, you know?
Yeah, right. Or the stranger really, more than anybody. Yeah. You know, like saying something mean wasn't odd, but that on that level too, right? That scale, that volume of voices saying terrible things. That's a part of it. It's just huge volumes of, maybe if you're big and famous, that many voices saying that many terrible things is a lot. And I know people have boundaries in place and things they don't do in order to not be crushed by that, or they have wisdom or
a group of
just
friends,
understanding,
you know?
Or a group of friends. Yeah, exactly. Again, not doing that right alone is really important. And I learned that in bands as well. Like, you know, my bands were my closest friends. But when it wasn't my full-time job, like I had to learn how to go build a circle of friends that I could trust and that I loved talking to, that nurtured me. We grow each other up, and I have such appreciation for that.
Well, and you had to grow circles within circles. So you had the inner circle, then you have the next layer and the next layer, because the bigger you get, and I noticed this as you got bigger, that you had some other circles just because you had to, just to let the business run, really.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because then you can't do all of it at some point. You're like, I'm on tour, or I'm playing shows, or I'm writing, or I'm making a record. So I need other people who are, you know, managers, right? Like who are going to do the rest of the business, because you just literally can't get to it. And you need support. Or for people who are getting really big, you kind of need a buffer, because you get a certain size, a little bit of crazy starts to show up, and you actually need, especially as a woman, a little boundary or protection. You know what I mean? Like if I was going to a gigantic show, doing a big show, and I had to walk from, you know, a huge crowd of people, for the most part, it was fine. But every once in a while, you get one person who wants to grab your arm, or, you know, like just take action at you. And it's like, whoa, you know, and people start to think you're a piece of property. Correct. If you're a public face, right? Like, I have access to you because you're public.
Yep. Well, it's funny. I've been watching through these COVID times right now. I know one national musician. I'm just going to leave it that way for that's not in any of our circles, but it's one of those things that communicating with them, they have a person out there that is their assistant, but I figured out that assistant is actually just a name. They're doing it themselves, but that's their layer.
Oh.
They created a name and an email address, and but that person doesn't really exist. It's just another stage name, but it's that filter to let people think that they're talking to an assistant So there is that level of separation.
Exactly. Well, and I think people, one, for protection and also for perception, right? Like if you're part of a larger group, I know as a musician, I've definitely made up like a management group because say if you're talking to a label, at least back in the day, didn't want to talk directly to the artist. Nope. It was the managers, lawyers, and then the label that talked. You know, if they were, it was uncomfortable for them to have a business conversation with the artist. They didn't like it. So like I would make up a management team so that I could get them to talk to me.
I have an agent now. I mean, just for my national speaking stuff, because I do speaking on smart home stuff and everything else. And I had somebody reach out this morning and I'm like, sounds interesting. Here's her contact information.
Exactly.
Yeah, here's her email. Here's her call. Give her a call. She'll tell you what we can do. And it's weird, but it's smart.
It's smart and it's necessary. I don't think it's not even weird. It's a part of your business. You are creative. You're creative, right? And so all your energy needs to go towards your creativity, the work that you want to do, the making of things. And, you know, that's where your energy needs to go. And after a while, as it gets bigger, you need to be able to focus on creating more things to keep your business growing and let someone else deal with the logistics because you just literally can't get to it all.
Well, it's funny. I was talking. This is a great example. And I was talking to a guy who's one of my advertisers out there and super cool guy, love him to death. And he's kind of a one-man show. And I was talking to him and I'm like, man, the first thing you need to do is getting an answering service. He goes, what do you mean? I said, go hire the Ruby receptionist or whatever, spend the $300 or $400 a month. And now you've got somebody else answering and transcribing your phone calls. So you're not having to look at that phone every time it rings. Now you can manage your time and you can stay focused on what you do well. And now you've got a way to hold yourself accountable as well to calling people back because you can check the box.
Yeah. There's so many innovative ways to get yourself support. And it's not a highfalutin, like snooty thing to do. It's necessary. But I think as an individual, I don't know if you felt this way, that's like a new thing to level up to needing something like that. And sometimes you're like, I don't know about you, but it's like, it's scary. And you're sort of like, oh, wow, I'm really getting big for my pants, you know, or whatever. Like, if you've been raised that way to say like, whoa. And it's not that. It's necessary for your business. You're leveling up, and leveling up is great. Like, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You know, like on the workshops I did recently, I had a virtual assistant because I am as a creative, I wanted to just be an open channel for coaching, and I couldn't look at all the comments or people. I would try, but I literally was like, it will stop me from speaking if I have to try and do both.
Correct.
So, and there's all kinds of assistants out there. I had a friend who, she was a single woman, right? Had moved to a new town. She would hire out, like, I need someone to come and put this couch together. And she would hire an assistant to like come and like do a bunch of things, you know, like,
but sometimes that's smart.
Yeah.
I mean, I did that here. I'm doing my kitchen remodel right now. And if you've seen that on social media, I've been popping stuff. Thanks. I had a 48-inch range I had to carry inside the house. Now, 10 years ago, I'd have got out my appliance dolly and I'd have wrestled that thing in there by myself. It said, I'll get it. It's only 400 pounds. I'll put it on the dolly and carry it in there. I went, no. I jumped on my app. I paid $60 for a crew to come over, a moving crew come over here and take 10 minutes and put it in. But I didn't hurt myself. I didn't damage stuff. And it was much cheaper than if I would have damaged something on there, or even my deductible would have been if I'd have hurt myself. So
completely worth it. Super valuable. Like, people doing work like that for you are so valuable, and it's worth your time and your money. I mean, that's what I say about coaching. I mean, coaching is really new to a lot of people, and coaching, you know, comes at a price, but it's worth it. But teaching people what coaching is and why it's super valuable is new, right? And it's definitely new for me.
Sure.
For a lot of levels, because one, I'm like, oh, you know me as a musician. Now I'm going to share that I do this and help you get to know what it is. But also on a higher level, say coaching is worth it every time. Like I've had coaches and spent a pretty penny, worth it. I don't, worth every stinking penny. Love it. I have a coach right now.
That's
worth
awesome.
it.
Worth it. Exactly.
Yeah.
So Carrie, how do people find you now? Because I can give off probably a dozen ways to people to get a hold of you, but where do you want people to, if they're interested in talking to you about coaching? And I know your stuff has been packing up with this next one here, but what's the best way for people to track you down?
Well, I think if they're on Facebook and they can go to Messenger, that's easy because I'm on that daily. I'm also on Instagram. You could message me there. And then if they want to go to the website, I have a website that is carrieakrecreative.com. And there's a place where you can contact me. So that's an easy way. And I check all of those all the time, every day.
Cool. And we'll put that up on the Around the House with Eric G Facebook page as well. So if you're out listening in the car, driving around, don't go writing it down. Just go over to the Facebook page and I'll steer you that way. But
that's awesome.
Carrie, thank you so much for coming on today. And let's check back and do some more of this stuff because this is super fun. And I love that you're out helping people now. And you've been doing it with the music, and now you're doing it on the coaching side.
Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate it. And it was super fun talking to you. We will talk again.
Oh, of course. Thanks, Carrie. For more information about Carrie, head to Carrie, Carrie, Akre, Akre, creative.com. And you can head over to our Facebook page, Around the House with Eric G, and I'll have a link over there. That's all the time we got for this week. I'm Eric G, and you've been listening to Around the House.
Around the House with Eric G is produced by, designed by Eric G, in association with Salem Media, and distributed nationally by the Sun Broadcast Group. All rights reserved. Copyright 2020, designed by Eric G. We will be back next week. If you missed part of the show, check out the podcast of all of our shows at AroundTheHouseOnline.com. Remember, measure with a micrometer, mark with caulk, and cut with an axe. Thanks for listening to Around the House.